Hi everyone, this is me Kish again. It's been a while since I recorded a video, so I thought I will do one. I actually already created the picture for this. So this is, I have to be honest, it's going to be a very grim video. I apologize. I know times are grim already with with the economy, the recession. Hopefully that we are going to, hopefully we can avoid, but it doesn't look like it, that we are heading into the crazy inflation and the war in Ukraine and everything. But the future that I see even beyond this is really bleak, and that is kind of what I am going to be talking about today. People have to understand, because it's not like I want to make your day horrible, or I am somebody mean, and all these, none of these. I am a person who is trying to wake you up, and the things that we are seeing today, you are seeing trailers of all the things that could be coming if we continue on this path that we are in currently, right? So do we want to get into that horror scenario, or do we not want? What could be the horror scenario? That's what we are going to be talking about here today. And unless we act right now ASAP, we already made so many mistakes, put the wrong people in power, made the wrong decisions, and they made things matters worse. But if we continue the same path, in a few years, we're not talking now decades, millennia, and all these type of things. We are talking years. Within this decade, in this decade, things can be so much horrible that whatever we have seen until today, in any war, in any recession, anything, will look like a picnic to what we could be seeing in the future, right? In the upcoming future, in this decade, that is by 2030, or and maybe at the most 2035, but within this time period. So this video can be grim. It's talking about the future possibilities and most likely what will happen, and I'm making it now, so you can start thinking, you can start becoming aware, and do whatever in your part in order to change this future, right? So that is what we are trying to talk about. So anyway, before we get into the future, first we have to start understanding. We'll start from the present, right? So where we are now, and where are things going, right? So basically, it's been over a year and a half since Biden took over office, probably maybe less than a year and a half, but close to it almost. So January, so when is 6 months? So maybe next month, a month or two, it'll be a year and a half, right? So from January 20th of last year, 2021. So it's hardly any time. That's like, there's like no time. And look at where we are already within a year. So when Trump left office, gas prices in the United States were $1.50 or dollar, maybe less than $2 at least, on average, at least in Texas. Right, world was totally peaceful. Islamic terror was almost never heard of, or was totally on decline. There wasn't any of that stuff. Economy was booming. Everybody was talking about which IPO went how many, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, maybe even some company like Tesla, probably, how these have all gone to the stratosphere. And and yes, there were COVID problems, but we were kind of squaring the circle. We got the vaccine, so people were lining up to get vaccines, right? So there were positive things, and we are hoping that lockdowns had ended and we are going to go into normal life would start returning once vaccination happens and all that, right? So this is the kind of scenario that was there, though it wasn't like total 100% rosy and everything happy, mainly because of COVID. But apart from the COVID part, majority of the things were looking good and positive, right? And Biden comes in, he blames Trump about COVID and how bad things were, and then all these mean tweets. So people were so mad about these. Why is Trump talking all this nonsense and blah blah blah? And then they went and I wouldn't say voted for Biden, but yeah, let's take it on that value. We'll see about what comes out with election fraud. Maybe today, it may take time, because obviously Democrats are very smart at this, right? So but let's take on face value that he won. Okay, and within a year, less than a year and a half now, where have we gone from where to where? Starting with COVID itself, despite having vaccine, we just crossed 1 million deaths in US by all these counts, which are like really slow counts and very undercounted. I would think we crossed the 1 million count probably by December 2021 itself, though they are telling us that we just did it a week ago or so, or recently. So in any case, so the deaths under Biden are now way more clearly than the deaths under Trump, and this is despite having a vaccine, despite having some pills that came out which supposedly will stop the virus spread and won't make the patient die. All these kind of new things, new technology. There's a lot more knowledge that we had with Biden in terms of how COVID works and how to prevent it, what medicines may be used. All these kind of things were there, but despite everything, the deaths are way more under Biden than they were under Trump. And not just the deaths, think of the cases. Look at the 2-3 waves that we got. We reached nearly 1 million cases a day with the Omicron variant, right? Yes, the only positive was, we didn't have lockdowns like we had under Trump, so we avoided those, and kind of though people were dying and everything, we didn't totally shut things down, because I guess nobody wanted to go back into the shutdown state, except maybe people in China and such dictatorships where you don't have much choice as a person. So at least the Western and the other democracies and most countries didn't want to go back. So we avoided lockdowns for sure, but business was impacted. It wasn't so, jobs were impacted, though people were getting their money, free money from the government. That's probably helped quite a bit in terms of, not causing too much pain. And then slowly, of course, later on, I guess more towards this year and stuff, people started going back to work, though there was virus impact and all that. In spite of that, everything was not shut down. So throughout the year, people have been going back, returning to work, but the performance on the virus control is pathetic when we look at Biden versus Trump. And not just that, and to even now, the COVID pandemic, I don't think is over, because especially in China, they have crazy lockdowns all over the place, multiple cities, and they were going on for months where you cannot even move, so this kind of tight, strict lockdowns. So I hope that, the joke is that virus has started working from home now. All these years it used to travel to other places, but was not in China, and now finally, it's happening in China as well. So is this the end of the pandemic? Will there be no more, crazy waves like before? I don't know. I'm not so sure. If you look at history, typically pandemics have lasted for 3 years, right? And in here, we have only had 2 years so far. So this March, that is last month or 2 months ago, we had the 2-year anniversary, right? When we started lockdowns was in 2022 March. So I'm not sure. I hope it's over, but not sure. So moving on to the next topic. So look at the economy. Trump gave an amazing economy. In fact, even Biden took credit that he created so many million jobs, and how great the economic recovery was last year. We had 5.6% or 6%, something close to 6% GDP growth, which is probably never happened in 30-40 years of American history or something, though it's not really growth, to be honest. It's just a recovery. None of these jobs were created by Biden. These were just Trump jobs that people were returning to as the economy started returning from the shutdowns, right? And then not just that, look at the stock market. So the stock market had gone even higher than where it started when the lockdown started, right? At the day lockdown started, the Dow Jones was around 28,000. I'm not sure what the Nasdaq was. I remember very well Dow Jones. Nasdaq was probably around 12 or 13,000, right, when lockdowns began. So not only did we go back to these old numbers post-lockdown, that say we go back to the 28,000, we went way further on the Dow Jones and we reached almost 36,000, right? So I think we had touched 36,000. So, and this is a global phenomena, including in India. For example, the Sensex, I remember, was only in the 50,000s when the pandemic started, and then it had crashed to, I don't know, 30,000, something like that range. And then when it recovered, not only did it go back to 55,000, it even went higher and higher. It crossed even 60,000. Right, I think it came closer to 65, probably didn't touch it. At least 63, 64 was the peak. So this is the kind of recovery despite a massive pandemic, and on top of it, inflation was super low. Right, we had $30 oil price not going up, despite all these demand returning, and even if going up, only slowly. So this is the kind of situation, the kind of an awesome economy, and then there was world peace. No country was going to war, shooting at each other. None of this crazy stuff was happening. Everybody minded their own business and were more worried about how to deal with COVID than how to start a war or fight somebody. Right? This was the amazing scenario, amazing thing, though there were all these people complained and everything was so bad and Trump screwed up everything. This is what they were told you, or they sold it to you, and many people believed that, especially the liberals, and voted for these guys. So look at where we are today within a year since then. Inflation is at a 40-year high in the United States and across the globe, and the Federal Reserve and all the central banks are too slow to act. They still haven't increased rates sufficiently, and they're only talking and haven't done much. Really, even now, despite this problem, and mainly the withdrawal from Afghanistan, leaving a big mess over there, handing it off back to the Talibanis, who supposedly these people thought will create inclusive government, and they have changed and whatnot. And what are we seeing over there? Women are being oppressed. Economic condition for them is pathetic, and these people have left billions of dollars worth of arms back there, American weapons, and those weapons are now being used by terrorists like in India, in Kashmir, and in various other places. They will surely make their way into the next wars that might be coming in those regions, with new terrorist groups spawning up. Right, so all this, Afghanistan became a big mess. And then what are surprisingly out of the blue, while we are already struggling with inflation throughout last year, lo and behold, what started this year? All of a sudden, Russia started invasion of Ukraine. And then these people are like, oh no, this is just out of the blue, Putin went crazy and blah blah blah, and all these stories, he wants to expand and rebuild the Soviet Union. They're starting to give you these nonsense theories. The real fact is, United States, not only United States, Democrats tried to expand NATO all the way into the neighborhood of Russia, right, touching the Russian border. When they tried to get Ukraine in, Ukraine had a pro-Russia government until I think 2014 or so. And America, that is CIA, and mainly under the Obama administration, engineered some coup over there and got these guys, pro-American guys, taking over in Ukraine, and they called it like an internal revolution. I'm sure CIA played a key role in this revolution, right? And they got their puppet, and they've been expanding NATO, and they're trying to get Ukraine into this, which is on the border of Russia. And what does that mean? That's like as equivalent of a Cuban Missile Crisis, as far as Russia is concerned, with nuclear weapons which can arrive anytime once Ukraine joins NATO at their borders. Right, so obviously Trump understood this. Trump was not pushing Putin into such crazy corners where he would have no other choice. Trump was working with Putin, getting him along, so we could really fight the real enemy, that is China, or not fight, but at least be ready for any eventuality against China. But instead, Democrats have alienated not just the Russia, they alienated Saudi Arabia, half a dozen countries for no reason, just because of, whatever, they don't like these people or some, crazy things like that. Trump didn't like half of these guys, but he worked with every one of them, majority of them. He was not like, I'm not going to talk to this guy, I'm not going to talk to that guy because he doesn't, I don't like him, he's not doing things that I think should be the right things to be done. Things like that. For example, Imran Khan in Pakistan. So Biden never called him, and later on there's rumor, or the accusation at least is, that Biden is who engineered the coup and got Imran Khan out of Pakistan, prime ministership. So we don't know how much true it is, but it doesn't sound untrue as well. So because Imran Khan supposedly was more pro-Russian and anti-American, and he was even in Russia on the day the Ukraine war started. Right? So this is complete crazy foreign policy. And then once the Russian war, the invasion of Ukraine started, which they had no choice, the Russians basically, because they have to defend themselves. And there are all these thugs and everybody going on. So anyway, and then when he went in, again, Biden, yes, at least he didn't send American troops in there to start fighting Russia. That's the positive, at least that he has not done so far, which is a good thing. Right, what does he do? He sends arms, ammunition, everything. Though the inflation is going crazy here, people are suffering in America. The borders are all open, millions are flooding in, all the illegals with no control. So and then the crime is going crazy here. People are struggling, suffering. Gas prices have gone up even before the invasion. Now it went up even more. And then food is getting scarce. So instead of trailing with these issues and trying to solve them, he wants to send more weapons to Ukraine, spend more money on war, and make the war even worse. Now that we have Sweden and Finland who also want to join NATO, this will only make Russia more, more wild, more angry, rather than, and there has been not a single negotiation between Biden and Putin on how to end this war. What can we negotiate? How can we settle? Instead, there is only daily escalation, provocation, and more ammunition for the war to get worse. Despite everybody suffering, and all these crazy sanctions which these people are imposing blindly are all like you are self-sanctioning yourself. Right? If Europe decides they don't want Russian oil, and what about gas? That they didn't say they don't want that. So Russian, if they don't get Russian oil, who is going to send them the replacement? How much is the price going to go up? This is insanity. Right? So they, first of all, they have made themselves so dependent on Russian oil. It's not something that you can cut off overnight. So okay, even if you cut off the oil, what about the gas? And winter is only a few months away now. Yes, in summer you may not need so much gas, but in winter, are you going to cut off Russian gas too? Or maybe this time Russia will cut off your gas, right, when they get mad. So instead of you cutting it off, what are you going to do then? Are all these countries going to freeze through the winter? I don't know, that might be a scenario we might be heading into. Not only do we pay crazy prices for petrol and gas in summer, we're going to pay crazy, many people in Europe may be freezing in winter with no heater, nothing, because natural gas has been turned off. So unless they do something, I don't know, crazy stuff, and somehow get supplies so quickly, which I doubt is going to be possible in that large scale, right? It is very unlikely. So I don't know where this scenario is headed. How did we get into this kind of a world in no time, since we got out of the Trump's watch? And not just this is just the start. So we'll talk about the future. What could be happening in China? What is in the Iran situation about the nuclear weapons they are trying to build? Now on top of all this is the food situation, right? So the food shortages everywhere. Wheat exports are not coming out of Ukraine and Russia, and other countries like India stopped export of their wheat, though they're a big producer, because they got to take care of their people first and worry about the world later. Right? So, and the United States, and then with all these lockdowns in China, there are all kinds of supply chain issues, and things are not coming out of there. Many things are not produced, so production is disrupted. So in the middle, and on top of it, with this inflation, the Federal Reserve and all the central banks are now forced to act, because inflation is hurting the people so much, and there is a midterm election coming out in November for Biden. If he doesn't do anything or try to show something that he's trying to control inflation by November, he's going to lose the election big time to Republicans, obviously, right? So, and then all his agenda, everything is gone for a toss. He cannot pass any bills, not even 50 majority either in Senate. Now they have, I think, 50-50 with VP Kamala Harris, who can, cast the tiebreaker vote. So that's also going to be gone. I don't know how many seats the Democrats might lose. So we'll see what happens in November. And House of Representatives, I'm not sure. I think Democrats are in the majority right now, is what I understand. They may lose that majority too. So both houses they may lose. So we'll see. That is anyway for future. But as of now, so central banks are forced to raise interest rates. And if they raise these interest rates and cut out all this cheap money, which they have been talking about doing and have done barely once or twice. They did 2 rate hikes so far. One was 0.25 and the second one was 0.5. And they're talking about, the Fed is talking about aggressively raising rates. Though it's only talk, I don't know how far they can really go, because it's obviously going to start hurting the economy. Though they say that they can engineer a soft landing, I don't see any soft landing happening. It's a crash landing. And all this free money that is being supplied across the globe, not just in the pandemic where it really went crazy in the last 2 years, but throughout since Obama came into office and we had the 2008 crisis. What have we done? We just printed money, raised up the debt, spent like crazy. And all this money had been going into the stock market. That's where the inflation was showing up until recently. Not in the supermarket, but in the stock market, with every stocks going crazy, like 5 times, 10 times from the 2008 lows, and home prices were going insane. And then all these kind of started going on steroids once during COVID times, because the money pumped in was 5 times, 10 times what it used to be happening before. And of course, Trump is partly to blame for this as well. He spent like crazy too, not just Biden. And then once Biden came in, it's even gone more crazy. And rather than cutting down, in like last year, we were supposedly opening up the economy. Things were getting back to normal. Why did we have to spend like crazy? We spent even more crazier than what happened in 2020 under Trump, sorry. Right, so and then now all these stocks which are worthless, the majority of these IPO companies, they don't have no profits, they don't make any, the business model simply doesn't work. They don't have any business model. They're thinking that I'll figure out what the business model ought to be later on down the line. Now I just give stuff away for free or for cheap, below my cost price, and then I just acquire so many customers, and then we'll figure out how to make profits later. Right, this is the kind of crazy IPOs, and everybody is drunk with cheap money, bidding up prices of whether it's in the stock market, whether it's in the real estate market. The real estate market has been going crazy, like in Dallas area where I live, houses have doubled or more than doubled in like 2 years, just during the pandemic times. It's completely insane. So, and all that is now, as Fed Reserve starting to increase rates, is all coming crashing down one by one. We just have 1 or 2 shoes that have dropped. Real estate hasn't been hit so badly as yet, but we got all these IPOs which are down 70 to 90% in most cases, right, from their peaks that they saw during the pandemic in the last couple of years, like companies like Peloton. Just to name a few. I don't even know many of these names. Snowflake, whatever, things that are there in the Cathy Wood, ARK Innovation ETF. That's down like 70 or 80% already from its peak. And she is loaded up with all kinds of junk and things like, other things like Bitcoin and all Bitcoin related, like Coinbase, what all kind of startups which went public, Grayscale, Bitcoin Trust. And these are all a mania, and and then all kinds of things they came up with. SPAC, I don't even know what these things are, and what else? There's more things like this. SPAC was one. There was NFT tokens, all kinds of crazy things with no value, no meaning, but they just cooked it up, and people were rushing into all this stuff. And then all these kind of altcoins other than the Bitcoin, like a dozen of them. One of them, I guess, some stable coin or something Luna, whatever, crashed to zero. Who knows how many people lost how many millions or billions in it. Right? So just insanity was going on in the marketplace. And now, unfortunately, once the Federal Reserve starts raising interest rate, which they have started already, we're close to a bear market today in the S&P. Nasdaq is already close to 30% down from its peak. So S&P is almost, today it kind of hit the bear market, 20% down intraday. So I see that this is all taking the world economy, not just the US economy, not just into simply a recession, but that there is a very high risk of us going into a depression, because there is no other way to control interest rates. The Federal Reserve has to start increasing some amount, right? Obviously, they cannot increase a lot, because then if the loan with the amount of debt that US has, which is over 30 trillion now, so the interest on the debt itself will become unmanageable, even at 5% interest rate. So it is very unlikely. And then not only that, the economy is so addicted to this cheap money that it cannot take 5%. It probably cannot even take 2% without coming totally crashing down, right, for Fed funds rate. So I'm not sure how far they can go in terms of raising these rates. But I feel that even 1% or 1.5%, if the Fed gets there, another 2 or 3 rate hikes is probably enough to prick this bubble. Because we're already down 20-30% in the stock market. So 2-3 more rate hikes, what is it going to bring us down to? 50% down? 40, 50, 60? Is the Fed going to have further appetite to keep raising interest rates even after that? I doubt it. Right? So then we are going to go into, we'll talk about, that's the anyway for future. So what the future looks like. So, and is the war looking like it is stopping? No. Is the inflation is looking like it might get into control? Maybe the depression or the crazy deep recession that we might have, will that bring it into control? I hope so. But then once the recession starts, obviously the Fed is going to have to cut rates and print again. And this time, if this bubble bursts, which is an everything everywhere bubble, the amount of printing that's going to be needed will be 5 times or 10 times what we did in 2008. Because there is so much more, the larger the bubble, the so much higher all these prices have gone. If you want to start bringing it back to those levels, the amount of printing required will be 5 times, 10 times the last 2008. That is, are we going to spend 5 trillion, 10 trillion will be the stimulus? Is that what we're headed to? Right? So things like that. What are we headed to in terms of international policy, in terms of how we are looking geopolitically with all these countries, and with the policies, who is going to be the politicians who will be coming, after the current ones? Where is the world headed? Right? So let's now that we have done an analysis of the current situation, let's start thinking and analyzing what the future may hold, and where we feel that we're starting to head, or the world is starting to head the way it is going right now, unless people start waking up already and start making changes right now and today itself, and as soon as possible, before the future that I am envisioning, and that is by logical analysis, before that unfolds. Right? So we'll talk about that in the next coming after this. Okay, so now that we have gone over all the happenings so far in the last 1.5 years or so of the Biden presidency, and where we are today right now, now it's time to start looking at what I see is the in store for the future. Right? So as we have all seen, the Nasdaq and the S&P are already in the bear market, which is down more than 20%, and I think Nasdaq is down more than 30%, and the Dow Jones is now not very far away from going down 20% as well. Right? And also the inflation is at an all-time high, maybe 40-year. The real inflation is even higher than the 1970s. The government number is 8.6 or whatever, but the real is probably 15 or 20%. And as we are all seeing, this is a global phenomenon, and not just in the United States, and of course the war in Ukraine is not helping this situation either. And more than just the war itself, It is all these self-sanctioning that the Europe and the West have put on themselves, that they're not going to buy Russian oil, and they will try to cut down on Russian gas, and all these things are by themselves hurting the Western economies, because they don't necessarily have another alternative to where they will replace all these lost oil from Russia from, or gas from, and they just want to go ahead and inflict pain on themselves. So that's also added to the fact that about the 10 plus years of money printing that has gone on, that is 0% interest rates and QEs since 2008 under Obama. So anyway, getting quickly to where this is leading. So it is more or less starting to become clearer to quite a few folks now that recession is almost a guarantee now. But I think it is going to be way worse than just a recession. It is very likely to be a depression, right? And initially it could be a deflationary depression, wherein as the Fed raises interest rates, the economy starts going into recession. Then just like in 2008, where oil had got up to $150 a barrel and everything, and then it crashed from there. So did gold, so did all the commodities as the US went into a recession. So similar kind of things, and I feel that we are setting up for a similar type of a September-October crash, with the Fed again increasing. They just did a 0.75% in June, so they might do another 0.75, 0.5, whatever, even 1% in July. And and then in September they may go a little easy, I guess, and November is the election. So but these June, July, and whatever we got, April, May rate hikes, getting the Fed fund rate to almost 2 or 2.5% is already sufficient to not only just send the markets into a bear market, and all of these IPO companies down 70, 80, 90%, then FANG stocks and net down like 30, 40, whatever, 50%, like Tesla is almost 50% down, right? Those are all just the and Bitcoin down over 50%, probably almost 2/3 wiped out, from 60,000 to under 20,000 now. So these are all tip of the iceberg, the peak of the the bubble, right, which were the most speculative assets. And of course you can say FANG is not that most speculative, maybe that's their second in line, right? The first most speculative are all these crazy IPOs, Bitcoin and all that. So FANG, but then there is the entire economy. There is millions of other stocks, thousands of other stocks, which all have gone crazy, like Microsoft or whoever, you name it. Everything has risen from 2008 under all these money printing. So those all need to retrace. So first, plus housing has gone insane, right? In the last, especially last 2-3 years, but even in the last 10 years from the 2008 lows. So housing first has to return back to the normal to the prices that it was before the pandemic, right? So these increased interest rates, now they're at 6.5% or so, the mortgage rate. So all this is going to help in getting back first to the pre-pandemic levels. But then we got the entire Obama bubble after that. From 2008 until now, everything is a bubble, everything is fake. So when all these things burst over the next 2 years or so, 2, probably even 3, right? And not necessarily that stock market will keep on falling for that long, which it could, but even if stock market starts to recover, because at some point the Fed is obviously going to abandon this increasing interest rate, they're going to go back to 0% or even negative and start doing QE. But they will have raised it enough and kept it higher for enough time in order to cause not just a recession but a massive depression, in my opinion. And like I was mentioning, initially it could be deflationary, but then as they revert and go back to 0% and mega QE, and this time to return this market to normalcy, it's not going to be enough to do what they did in 2008. They have to do 10 times, 5 times, 10 times, probably even 20 times more, because those prices to come back again, the insanity that we have seen in the last couple of years and throughout the last 10 years, is going to take even more and more debt. and are people going to be dumb again and not let the dollar crash and still believe in the dollar and believe in the Fed and in the US government, keep lending bond and money to US government at low rates and again create an asset bubble? I doubt it, right? So I think this time when they do this, it's going to be a mega inflationary depression, right? So starts with a deflationary depression but very quickly switches to inflation, kind of like in 2008. If you saw, initially we had a deflation when all the markets started crashing, but then Obama came in and started doing QE and 0% interest rate and TARP and bailouts and all this. So initially we got massive inflation. So if you remember, oil was over 100, gold went over 2000, right? So there it until about 2012, 2013, there was mega inflation, and people, it was so bad that Manmohan Singh in India lost the election because his years of inflation was so terrible that people were so upset with his government. And in 2013, when the election happened in 2014, people were so mad and they voted him out and voted Modi in, right, in India. So, and also at that time, though inflation was high, Fed was able to convince everyone that they are able to manage the economy, they will take care of inflation, they are going to raise interest rate appropriately when the time comes and whatnot. So nothing to worry, don't worry, everything is great, just go buy stocks and shop at the mall. This is all what they were saying. And then suddenly gold, which had gone to 2000, just crashed down to 1000, and oil, which was at $100 plus, came down to like $30 a barrel under Obama and continued to stay around that price under Trump as well. Maybe have gone up a little bit, but in and around that range. And then again the pandemic made it to come back down even further, right? So that was what happened around between 2014 to about now, which is 2022. So this kind of was also a lucky time for Modi, because he was only facing very low inflation, and he could convince people that he brought inflation down. Half of it was this Fed stuff, and the other half was mainly thanks to Trump, because he got and partly Obama as well. So under these people, especially under Trump, America became the largest producer of oil in the world, beating Saudi Arabia, Russia, everybody. And that helped in lowering oil prices like crazy and keeping it really low. Well, all those good days are gone now, and we are at 120, something in that range of oil price once again under Biden. So anyway, so this is the kind of depression that I see, and I feel that this is not only going to last for 1 or 2 years, chances are it may last the entire decade, right? So some form, and resulting in major problems with the dollar itself dropping in value eventually at some point. And because the debts are going to be so high in the United States, we're already at 30 trillion, maybe even 50, 60, who knows, they may even get it to 100 trillion by the end of this decade, right? And in this, even if Biden is removed and Democrats lose, and say Trump comes in, or a Republican, maybe DeSantis or whoever, right? If Trump comes in, he's only going to get 4 years, because he'll be by then his term will be over, right? So his 8 years will be done. So I feel that yes, he might fix some of these problems, end the wars, increase the oil production, try to fix the American economy, all these things. But even he cannot prevent what is coming completely. He can just delay the inevitable, which is a dollar crash, which is the US dollar losing its status, and massive inflation in the United States, and also nobody providing cheap debt, that today people are buying up. China, Japan, everybody who does business with the US, they just recycle their dollars. And even if the 10-year Fed fund 10-year treasury bond rate is like 1%, which as it had been for almost for even a decade, since 2008, people who are loaning money to the US government at such cheap rates. So I don't think that is going to continue beyond probably the end of this decade. By then, folks are going to wise up, especially when Democrats return, and they are going to be probably spending 2 or 3 trillion. We are already close to that, I guess, right now in deficit spending every year. So what is it going to look like in in the next Democratic term, whether it is in continuation into 2024 or whether it is in 2028 and beyond? Are we thinking 4-5 trillion in annual deficit every year in the budget, with the debt raising by 5 or who knows 7-8 trillion, 10 trillion every year? So those are the kind of crazy things that are going to be required to sustain this kind of same bubble and keep assets at these high prices that we have seen before this bubble burst, right? So whereas I in 2008 only 2-3 trillion of all these QE and all were sufficient. So I think now if in this recession / depression that's not going to be enough, we are going to need 10-20 trillion, right? So now, and this is again not a just limited to the United States, right? It's a global problem, because globally, like Obama got the entire world to agree along, and almost the entire world to go along with him in reducing interest rates and doing QE and keeping interest rates crazy low. Look at it in Europe. They even went negative. Japan has had low interest rates forever. India, they did kind of sort of the same thing, print like crazy. We had a massive real estate has gone up like insanity from in the last 10 or 15 years in India levels. So this is going to be a global depression, right? So and also, so what could be a situation if the United States and the rest of the world, especially the West, are looking like they're going to be going down the tubes, or their days of hegemony, their days of ruling the world seems to be becoming weaker and weaker, while at the same time we see that China, despite all its problems, starts becoming the new ascendant power, which is slowly starting to overtake the United States, right, and become the new hegemon or the new kind of the superpower on the block, right, by the say by around towards the end of this decade, if not like tomorrow or in the next couple of years or 3 years, right? So what kind of a situation would the US, would the Democrat coming in at that time be facing, right? So given the past history of Democrats that we have seen, as well as right now, we saw how under Trump we had total world peace with no major wars going on in any place, Islamic terror nearly ending, right? Whereas now we are again back to Russia-Ukraine war conflict. The minute Biden came in, Islamic terror is again starting, though slowly. Afghanistan is left to the dogs, to back to Taliban. We don't know what's going to come out of there. Iran is trying to get its nukes, and Biden has no clue what to do about it, right? So all these things are slowly surfacing. Pakistan is becoming a basket case along with Afghanistan, and they're all allying with China. So things are really looking bad here. So, and let's talk about who the future leaders are going to be in this world beyond the current one. So currently we have Boris Johnson in the UK, we got Biden in United States as the president, and we got Modi, Narendra Modi as the Prime Minister in India, right? So let's start thinking about a little bit further down, who are going to be the next among the next presidential and prime ministerial candidates in these three important countries. Of course, on the other side in Russia, it still is going to be Putin, unless he dies or something, right? So until death, Putin and probably Xi Jinping in China, they're going to remain as they are until the end of the decade in most likely case, right? Unless they have some health problem, or who knows, a coup, which is very unlikely, or things like that happen, or things get so bad in their country that people have a revolution, which is even more unlikely, right? So these people are nearly permanent. So whereas on the other side, so along with that, we will discuss shortly, what about the Arab world? What about the Islamic terror? How is the shape going to be by 2030? of the new wave of Islamic terror that is slowly emerging within the Middle East, within Afghanistan, Pakistan, and all these areas, right? We'll come back to that shortly. But let's talk about the future leaders of US, UK, and India. So starting with the US. So Kamala Harris is the Vice President of the United States right now, and we are in a large woke movement where they want to give representation and position and promotion and all kinds of things to like colored people, especially colored women or gay people, the LGBTQ and whatnot, but especially colored women, right? So colored women today are like in the kind of, if there is a colored woman who qualifies, even has the basic requirements needed, chances are in the Democratic Party that person will automatically get the seat, no matter what the position may be. Like we saw it in Supreme Court, justices, we have seen it in Vice President, we have seen it almost everywhere, and that's kind of the norm, will continue to be the norm for quite a while now. So chances are that the next Democratic candidate for president will probably be Kamala Harris, right? And she doesn't even need to run as a candidate. Who knows, if things go lucky for her and unlucky for Biden, he might be removed, whether due to bad health or death or who knows what, or some internal conspiracy things inside the party due to bad performance, and Kamala Harris could even be the president within the next year, not within this Biden term, not necessarily have to wait for future. Though I hope that even if she loses to Trump, or the Republican in 2024 or even before that, because we should get the hoax is exposed, the election hoax, the fraud, and Trump is put into presidency even before 2024 would be the ideal outcome, so that we don't have to go through the pain of this presidency for another 2+ years. But we don't know, so in either case, we hope that at least in 2024, if not sooner, that we get Trump again. DeSantis or somebody else, I guess, is okay. I'm not saying they're totally bad, but I feel Trump is the only right person for this country at this point, right? So I honestly don't necessarily know DeSantis and all his positions. Maybe when he gets into running, we'll figure things out, who the other alternatives are in the Republican Party. I'm sure there are many others as well, but among all of them, Trump still is the front runner and the best person here. So hopefully we will get a Trump presidency again, whether 2024 or sooner, right? But in any case, so Kamala may still be return in 28, if not in 24, right? Even if she loses, because that's kind of the status of the Democratic Party as to where it is and what kind of people they may nominate. Plus, remember, Kamala comes from California, which is the largest population liberal state. Whereas if there are other women who may run against her, they're not going to be having as many votes or as much popularity, probably even as much name recognition as a colored woman, right, as she has, relative to the others, if they especially come from some smaller state, unless it is Texas maybe, but Texas is still not a big Democratic state. But if you come from, like, say, Georgia or whatever, like the lady from there, I forget, Stacey Abrams or something, yeah, she can be a candidate, but I don't think she's going to be as popular as Kamala Harris, right? So she has, I still think, the best chance. So assuming for this conversation that Kamala is the next next president of the United States when Democrats return to power, right? Which hopefully will be to 2028 and not 24, right? So let's hope for that. So similarly, who is next in line in UK? So right now we got Boris Johnson, and based on the media and everybody out there who are talking, it appears that Rishi Sunak, who is the Chancellor of the Treasury, I guess, like a finance minister, what we call, or Secretary of the Treasury, right? So in the US, is kind of pitched as the person next in line to take over, become the Prime Minister in UK for the Conservative Party. Of course, the Labour Party will have this own, but I think they're a little bit out of favor right now, the Labour Party. I don't know if they are going to make a comeback in the next election. So far it's not looking like that, but you never know, anything can happen. Right, so if Conservative win again, chances are Sunak may be the Prime Minister. I don't know if whether it will take 4 years, 5 years, whatever, in a few years. Similarly, let's look at India. So Narendra Modi in India is his popularity is like unchallenged. For miles there isn't any challenger that we can see. There are names that are there, but I doubt that there are any serious challengers to Narendra Modi at this point. So he, despite a bad economy, despite things not going so great, it is very likely that Narendra Modi is going to win the 2024 elections hands down, and possibly even if the seats go down, it will not go down by much, or who knows, there is likely that the number of seats may even increase in India, right? And he is ensuring that as of right now, so doing all the Hindu-Muslim agenda that BJP has, continuing on with those, and I'm sure more of those are going to come between now and the election. So there is a list of bills that have been talked about, whether it is uniform civil code, whether it is population control, whether it is NRC, giving citizenship, proving your citizenship of India, especially the Muslims who maybe have come from Bangladesh. Will be deported or cannot be citizens of India, so those checks, which is the CAA and NRC, and then CAA, which is another controversial, but it should be so simple and obvious, but I'm not sure why it's controversial, that Hindus from the neighboring countries or wherever will get citizenship quicker if they come to India as refugees, versus if you are a Muslim or of some other like Christian or someone else, because it's obvious that Hindus can only go to India as their one single country, whereas Muslims or Christians have dozens of countries they can go to in case of persecution or any problems they may face in being in one particular country, right? So even that is very contested issue in India. So all these and then there is more Kashmir and whole bunch of stuff, burqa, all these triple talaq, and going further on that, so on these practices of Muslims. So there is a whole bunch of agenda items that are there for Modi to use, and which will help him in kind of playing the the Hindu card, or kind of doing what the Hindus have been asking for years and decades. So, and also the temple issues, whether there is the Kashi Vishwanath or the Mathura Krishna Janmabhoomi. So all these are controversial issues that are going to kind of appeal to the emotions of the Hindus, especially in North India, and kind of will help in ensuring Modi victory. Apart from that is the Pakistan-China card, right? So just like in before the last election, Modi did the surgical strike against Pakistan, and so chances are that before this election, before meaning not just 1 or 2 months before, but maybe a year and a half even, starting from 2023 January till the election day, right? So chances are there will be some form of action against Pakistan, hopefully not against China, but you cannot rule it out either, right? So, and hopefully none of these escalates into something bigger, and so those are also likely for election purposes for 2024. And of course, anyway, Pakistan needs to be taught a lesson for all the things that they are doing in terms of cross-border terrorism and everything. So in that way it will not be objected as well, and it's going to be welcomed only, and as long as major bloodshed or something, or especially for the Indians, does not happen, right? So those are all the tricks and tactics that are going to be helping in the upcoming election. So once Modi comes to power again in 2024, he will already be into his third term. There will be his third term, and he will cross his 75 years of age within a few years, I guess, after 2024 or maybe around then itself. So his chances are that he is going to nominate a new person as prime minister somewhere in his during his third term, that is after 2024, and retire right from politics, or just be like an advisor or something like that, or take some honorary position or something like that, which is again what is talked in the media. So who is likely to be the new next prime minister of India after Modi? So again, the names that are in the news, which most people are also supporting and wanting, is not Amit Shah, who is the current number 2, you can say, in the party, but now the current sort of, you can say, number 3 most popular figure, which is Yogi Adityanath, right, who is currently the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh. He just won his second term over there, and who is also considered a more hardline figure, Hindutva figure than Modi, right, both in his clothes, in his approach, in his speech, in his actions. He is more considered as more decisive than Modi as well in taking tough decisions. Modi is more like he thinks to placate all the different audiences, whereas Yogi is not that way. He just goes for it. He is very decisive, whether it is using the bulldozer or whatever the issue may be. He is decisive in taking decisions as well as taking actions as too, especially on the Hindutva front. So on Hindutva related issues. So chances are, so Yogi Adityanath is likely to be the next Prime Minister of India. So then the trio of Kamala Harris in the United States, Rishi Sunak in UK, and Yogi Adityanath, coincidentally all 3 are people of Indian origin, right? So these could be the very likely next next leaders of these 3 key countries. So given the the history of Democrats, and just now coming back to what we were discussing, the economic conditions, so which wherein United States and the West may look like they are declining, and the dollar status as the reserve currency is seriously in question, economy is in a depression, and inflation is crazy high. So envision a 1929 to 1939 type of a situation. Back then the world was in a deflationary depression, because the world was in a gold standard, not a dollar standard or a paper fiat standard. Whereas now we are in a paper standard where governments can print unlimited amount of money with nothing stopping them, no holds barred, which is what United States has been doing all so far, for the last 20 plus years. And and now with a economic downturn, serious economic downturn, they're going to have to crank up the printing press 5 times, 10 times more than what they have done so far. So this time, it being a more painful inflationary depression, at least in a deflationary depression, you may not have a job, but at least food is cheap, right? Here in an inflationary one, neither do you have a job nor can you eat food, right? So that is the kind of scenario that may arise. And in such a scenario, seeing that China is ascending and and taking over the world, given that it's a dictatorship, which already Democrats hate, like you're seeing with Russia, the chance of them, these people, especially Kamala, and joining with Rishi Sunak and a very decisive Yogi Adityanath compared to the current Narendra Modi, who is more calculative, who has more experience and more thinking, you can say, in a way, and trying to appease all the different sections of society. Unlike that, a very decisive Yogi Adityanath may join with these 2 other leaders, and at the first provocation, Kamala is going to use this situation to get Yogi to start a possible what will eventually become a World War III against China, Russia. And the way it could start is, again, we got to remember I mentioned about who would be the leader of the Islamic world, right? So here we got to think a little bit, or go a little more deeper into the current situation. See, when Bill Clinton kind of withdrew from Afghanistan, right, all the American involvement that they had during the war against Soviet Union from 79 to 89. So when started with of course George Bush, but primarily when Bill Clinton came to the presidency around 92 onwards, they totally withdrew all the help, aid, everything to Afghanistan, as well as to the Pakistan ISI and military, and imposed sanctions on them because of the fear that Pakistan is working on a nuclear weapon, right? And then at that time, in fact, a long period of dictatorship of Pakistan had ended with the death of Zia-ul Haq, and Pakistan had returned to becoming a democracy. But America did not care, Bill Clinton did not care that it had become a democracy, and instead of aiding and helping Pakistan, he in fact withdrew all the support and instead imposed sanctions on Pakistan, and of course left Afghanistan to fend for itself, right, which resulted in the creation of Al-Qaeda eventually, and the 9/11 attacks in 2011. So the new group that was formed at that time, terrorist group, when this kind of a vacuum was created, was Al-Qaeda, with the leader as Osama bin Laden. So similar kind of events repeated themselves under Obama presidency in Iraq, right? So Obama, same kind of deal. So the previous guy before him, which was George Bush Jr., had gone in and started an Iraq war, deployed troops over there, American troops in Iraq. So Obama decided to pull out these troops suddenly on a whim, and and again created a power vacuum, which resulted in a even worse terrorist group than Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda did not look to own land, did not look to take over countries into their power and create a caliphate and all that. But then we got ISIS, which was looking to do exactly that, create caliphates, grab land, take over and conquer. Of course, the torturing the people and slaughtering the whoever they didn't like and all that. That is all part of the way these thugs operate. Plus the terrorist attacks and beheading and Islamic Sharia law and all this kind of stuff. Right. So now this group ISIS was led by Baghdadi. So now this same policy has once again been repeated in Afghanistan by Joe Biden, right? So who again on a whim pulled out of Afghanistan recently, and left the country over. He handed it over to the Taliban, and now America is not involved in the region. They don't care. They have left them to fend for themselves, and and now they're not even by Joe Biden was not even talking to Imran Khan of Pakistan, and Pakistan is in a very dire situation in terms of its economy, and it is barely able to feed its own people or pay most of its bills. It could become a totally failed state, go bankrupt at any point in the next few years, if not next few months itself, right? So that is the precarious situation that Pakistan is. Of course, Afghanistan is in even more horrible situation with horrible Islamic thugs like Taliban ruling the country. So now what is this going to result in? So just like we saw last two times, are we likely to get an even worse terrorist group out of Afghanistan now for the third time, who are not only going to be worse than Al-Qaeda but also worse than ISIS? So not only will they be doing Al-Qaeda type terror attacks, not only will they be controlling a land like how ISIS used to do in probably Afghanistan and Pakistan, and the third thing, are they also likely to have control over the Pakistani army and the nuclear weapons of Pakistan? which will be totally new, that we have not seen a terrorist group do this way so far. You can argue North Korea is such a scenario, but probably an Islamic terrorist group with an army and a nuclear weapon. Is that the likelihood of that future coming to pass, coming to become a reality and a nightmare for all of us? Is that the future that is very likely? And then this particular terrorist leader who will proclaim that is the caliph of Islam and whatnot, and he might even go and join along with China and Russia against the United States, and UK and India, of course, right? So is this going to be a World War III type scenario? And then, like I was mentioning, that actual war may start initially between India and Pakistan. That is India against these terror outfits, right? Which with China, and then Kamala may provoke something, escalated this to go get China involved in it, looking at the opportunity that okay, this is the way how we are going to take revenge against China, how we are going to bring them down. So the thing to remember is, like, this is not something, I'm not making this out of you're asking, oh, how are you thinking, imagining all this future, have you gone crazy? No, I have not gone crazy. This is exactly the history of the 19th century or the 20th century, 1900s, right? What happened? Initially we had a pandemic in 1915, which was the Spanish flu, which lasted 2 or 3 years. After that, as United Kingdom, which was the superpower then, which is similar to the United States now, so who ruled most of the world back then, saw that Germany was rising, and Germany was becoming stronger than the United Kingdom. What did the United Kingdom do? They started not one but 2 world wars, right? Though they will tell you that, oh, we didn't start this world war, Germany started it, and we were just responding and reacting and blah blah blah, which is all bullshit, right? So they got 2 world wars started. For what reason? The one and only reason is to not allow Germany to rise up and be more stronger than UK. So that way UK would have lost all its territories, which kind of they lost most of it in in World War II anyway, unless United States and US Soviet Union came to their rescue, right? So that was this is what the history of the UK was. And look at the 1900s. First we had the great the pandemic, followed by the Great Depression, then followed by World War III. That was followed by 1947 partition of India and massive Hindu-Muslim riots in India, killing lakhs of people during the partition, right? So this is what took place in the first 40-50 years of 1900s. So the same kind of patterns are likely to be repeated in the 2000s, right? So we already had the pandemic, but of course back then there was like a 10-year, in the 1900s there was a 10-year gap between one instance to the other, you can say, sort of. If you say pandemic happened in 1915, then World War II started earlier itself, but let's take World War I started early, but let's take World War II, which was the bigger and the more major war, right? So that started only in before that the Great Depression started in 1929. So from the pandemic to Great Depression, so 1915 or so to 29 is about 10 odd years. Similarly, 1929 to 1939, the start of World War II, again 10-year gap. And then from 1939 to 1947, which is the partition of India and the riots that followed then, again a gap of about 10 years, right? So between all these instances there were 10-year gaps. But chances are in 2000s, obviously we have advanced in technology and everything, so warfare will and events also are faster now. So is there not likely to be that type of a 10-year gap, more like only 1 or 2 or maybe max 3-4 year gap between the same kind of things repeating? So we already had the pandemic corona, Now we are heading into a depression, like at least that's what my analysis will tell you. And post right after that, so let's say depression starts from 2022 or 23, goes till 25, 26, and then within a couple of years after that, are we looking at a World War 3 under Kamala, Yogi and Sunak, right, in their as leaders in their respective countries around 28, 29 in that time frame, right? And in fact, in this situation, the Hindu-Muslim riots of 1947 that we just spoke about, chances are that they will not even wait for all these events to transpire and then happen after in 1930s, right? Given the way things are going right now in India, chances are within the next 2 to 3 years itself, in between these other events, depression and world war and all these kind of things, we might also see a mega Hindu-Muslim riots, right? And not only that, basically the unfinished job of the partition, that is, which still did not separate Hindus and Muslims completely. Millions of Muslims still stayed back in India, and as the main problems of partition, the riots happened only more in the west of India, kind of in Punjab, and you can say like Punjab was almost completely divided into Hindu-Muslim separation, right? So you will not see that many Muslims remaining in India's Punjab. Same way today, though earlier there were many Sikhs and Hindus who might have remained in the Pakistan side of Punjab, their population is now probably very minuscule, right? So there was a complete separation of Hindu-Muslim, at least in Punjab, though obviously it did not happen that way in Kashmir, and so that did not occur as much on the eastern side of Indian border, whether it is in West Bengal or Assam and all these bordering states between India and Bangladesh. So now with this CAA, NRC and all kinds of stuff happening, are we going to see a 1947 like repeat again, with a similar with the major focus being on eastern India and the unfinished business of partition being finished and total separation of Hindu-Muslim happening on the eastern side of the Indian border as well, right? So this is something that could also be what is coming in the near future. So I don't want to be negative and depressing, but this is unfortunately the only future that I am seeing, and I think the signs of this are pretty evident. Like I have called it in my previous video, Mahamandi, mega depression, Mahadanga, mega riots 1947 like, and Mahaparamanu Vishwa Yudh, which is a mega World War 3, which is also nuclear apocalyptic, right? So this unfortunately seems like the future we are likely to head to, under the it may not necessarily happen under Biden, Modi and Boris Johnson, because at least these people are kind of, you can say, more experienced leaders, though they may have things may not be going as they planned or as they would like it, and they may not have total control over everything that happens, but it is unlikely that they are dumb enough to kind of take this world into a World War 3 right now within the next few years itself. So even if some major conflicts happen, skirmishes, maybe there's likely India-China border could have some problem. There could be a Taiwan conflict. Iran may get nukes, right? But and North Korea may wag its tail some more. But unlikely that any of these things are going to take us to a World War 3 immediately. And of course, the sooner that we can get Trump, the more we can have peace, and at least all these bad outcomes can be delayed for a while. But of course, even Trump, I don't think, can stop it completely or prevent it, altogether, because soon after him, Another Democrat is very likely to come back. We have discussed this in before, with all these immigrants coming in under Biden and getting citizenship. All the doors are open in United States, and already the population of liberals is so overwhelming, as we saw in the election that Biden got 7 million more votes than Trump or something. And most of these people are moving from California, New York to states like Texas, Florida, and turning them blue as well. So the chance of Republican winning beyond 2028 are going to become slimmer and slimmer, right? With the way the current policies they have, unless they start becoming socialistic as well, and embrace all this wokeism and whatnot. So it's unlikely that the Republicans can really win going forward. So chances are a Democrat is almost certain to return in 2028, post hopefully a Trump win. If a non-Trump like a DeSantis or somebody wins, is he going to be able to get re-elected in 2028? We shall see. Again, it won't be an easy task. So in any case, and not that a Republican may not start World War III either, right? So I feel the chances are lower. They're generally been more sensible in the history, except for, of course, George W. Bush too, right? The Bush Jr. So apart from barring him, who started like Afghanistan, which of course was a response to 9/11, but the Iraq war, it's more like a revenge war against Saddam Hussein. So apart from that, typically most other Republicans have been a lot more sensible and not starting wars, and I have already made a video about that, history of Democrats. You can look at it. So this seems like the very likely future that we are headed into in the next, in the remaining part of this decade, right? So is this written in stone? Obviously it sounds very bad, and it sounds like, and if there is a World War III, obviously billions of people are going to die, not just millions, right? And if it gets really ugly and nuclear weapons become used and all that, hope that it does not end in the end of the world, right? And more saner and sensible things prevail amongst folks, and hopefully they will be able to sort this out and stop the war before it gets to the point where the entire planet is finished off, right? So I hope not, and I feel confident. I can even tell you what kind of a scenario may arise. See, in a World War III situation, the key player, the only player in my opinion who can put an end to World War III is going to be Russia, right? So Russia will be the key player, because the war really is going to be between India and China. It is, yes, United States is there, when Britain is there, but they are going to be in a very weak shape themselves. Not necessarily, they will not be the ones with they don't have that many manpower anyway, and it's a very aging population. So the key people who are going to be providing the manpower in this situation, in this world war, is going to be India. And chances are that, yeah, they might be using American and British weapons or European weapons, right? But if there can be a peace brokered between India and China to stop this war, right? In the case of such a major war erupting, that is kind of can go a long way in stopping the war. And the person who can play a key role in that is going to be Russia, because Russia is the only country, though India may have chosen the American side in this particular war, they still have historic relationships with Russia. So chances are Yogi Adityanath, being the decisive Hindu leader, seeing the threats from China and the Muslims, may be forced to kind of side more with the Americans, like kind of Modi is already starting that, then and kind of put the relationship with Russia that India has in the freezer for the time being when this war starts, right? So possibly there might eventually this could lead to a revolution in India, because India will be one of the major sufferers in a war of this nature. right? Not only are they going to suffer with the bad economy, with the riots that we are talking about between Hindus and Muslims, the unrest, they are also going to have to then pay the price of a mega world war, kind of like how things were in Europe, right, in World War II times, from in the early 1900s or 1900 to 1950. Imagine the state and the plight of Europe. The probably 5 times more or 10 times more worse is likely to be the condition of India in this world war. And of course, not that India only will suffer, all will suffer, China, everybody. No, majorly in Asia. Asian countries, unlike the last two world wars, this world war is most likely more likely to be in Asia. And the Asian countries are the ones that are going to have the pay the bigger burden, bear the brunt of the burden than European or American, whether it is South America or North America or African countries, right? So chances are this is going to be in the Indo-Pacific, along with, of course, in the Middle East as well, with Israel having its issues with Iran and other Middle Eastern countries, most Islamic terror, and these all having, India will have to probably wage war against those countries as well, not just against China, right? And also probably, though Iran today is a friend of India, it's not clear how the scenario is going to be when World War III happens, because if India is aligned with US and Israel, they are obviously anti-Iran, and who knows, at that point Iran may have nuclear weapons as well, which is probably likely in another 6 months to a year under Biden, right, the way things are going. So India may have to contend with three-side nuclear weapon states, China, Pakistan and Iran, and be the one fighting all these three, of course with American backing and European backing, but really India having to do the major heavy lifting, right? So with this kind of a scenario, people are going to be so sick and tired of this current dispensation, though they love them so much right now, and they India can't have enough of these leaders, and there is this andhabhakti and prize and all kinds of social media outpouring on streets, outpouring everywhere, and it also is even in the polls, right? So there is almost undefeatable, unbeatable, invincible status that Modi and the BJP have today is going to end in tears if the future that I envision plays out, right? And people who are all the well-wishers and who are all the great bhakts of this dispensation are going to be the ones that will start hating them the most, and they will be yearning for change. And chances are that there is going to be a new leader who will work with Russia in kind of, hopefully, this is my thinking, in kind of working towards brokering a peace in this World War III between India and China, and eventually likely overthrowing the current dispensation and creating a new form of government, which I would call a capitalistic Hindu, Sanskrit speaking, true Hindu, Sanskrit speaking dictatorship in India, right? So that is what I see as the future, kind of like how previous world wars have resulted in change of government or change of the type of governance across the globe. Like, for example, at the end of World War I, the Ottoman Empire ended, and many of the changes that came in all these Middle Eastern countries that we have now started appearing only then at the end of the Ottoman Empire. And also similarly, at the end of World War II, the British Empire ended, and a lot of these countries started getting freedom. All across the colonies of Britain began to get freedom. There are wars have ended, basically dictatorships or kingdoms, and established democracies previously, like in Germany, the Hitler, as well as in Japan, right, at the end of World War II, the Hitler's dictatorship as well as the Japanese monarchy monarchy did not end, but at least they started getting a democratic form of government in both these places. So similarly, those wars resulted in the spread of democracy. But now we are likely to see an opposite outcome at the end of this World War III, with the few remaining people who will still make it and survive the that World War III, may see the re-emergence of dictatorships in this world, because it will be very clear by that point that yes, though Russian and Chinese dictatorships may be bad, but American, European and Indian democracies are worse, and they will have failed totally to deliver for the people. And the state of affairs and state of lifestyle in the United States and in Europe post this World War will be pathetic. It will be more like Venezuela, right? So that kind of a depression, hopefully not like Africa, but but definitely more like a third world country than a first world country, right? And in India, with this new dictatorship, with this new leader, the potential of India to become the world superpower, to become the world #1 economy, which it always has been until the 17th century, right? And using its population and providing for its population via capitalism, the growth that is necessary, whether it is 10 to 15% more and plus GDP growth per annum for 20-30 odd years, like how China has achieved, and then overtake China, overtake United States. By then all those countries post this war will already be destroyed, right? So, and emerge as the world #1, the only superpower in the world by, say, the year 2047, which is 100 years of Indian independence from the British, is the future I envision as to what is very likely to happen. So that is the positive side of it, right? So, but to get to that positive outcome, we unfortunately may have to go through this decade, right? Starting from now, I would say, of now to about 10 or 12 years of all these bad, horrible, never worst type of events which have never been seen before in the history of humanity to unfold, unfortunately, right? Before we can get to those golden days where and also this kind of a leader and this kind of a rule in India will ensure that there will never be another world war or any major war of this kind for the next 1000 years at least, if not forever. And and whoever remains on the planet, at least they can work and survive more peacefully and live a better, more progressive, prosperous life, rather than just fighting with each other and hating the other person and all these kind of things that we do and that we live in the current world today, right? And then fights between religion, between color of skin, you name it. There is no reason, caste, creed, all kinds of reasons for humanity to fight with each other, right, and hate each other. So ending all these and creating a more prosperous, progressive future, right? So that is the way the world is going to be, as I see, by the year 2100 and further, right? So the India will have established its dominance, will have started to spread its influence and its teachings, like how it has done throughout history. From and earlier, I think many of its teaching went more towards the east of India, like into China and like whether it is Buddhism or so, rather than more to the west. Some of it made it to the west, like numbers, game of chess and things like that. But this time I think the west of India also needs equal amount of teachings and equal amount of how to be a human, right? How to live peacefully, all these type of things. And hopefully even the spread of Hinduism across the globe is necessary in order to make people really behave like humans and live like humans, right? So I don't, the way the current religions that are out there, whether it is Christianity, whether it is communism, whether it is Islam, of course, the most biggest one of them, or whether it is liberalism, right? These are all making people live like animals. They are not solving the problems between these based on all these hatreds, based on various different aspects. And though liberals claim, you will argue, I'm sure some of you, oh, what are you talking about, liberalism? That's the greatest thing. No, that's the worst thing. This is what is making things worse. It's not making things better, right? So though they claim to be the people who are for equal rights and for representation and for solving the old problems, you will see in this, as things play out in the next few years, that they are the worst of the type of thinkers and the worst among the war starters that we have already seen in throughout the 100-year history of Democrats. But even if you have any doubts about it, you are likely going to see that in this decade, as things which I envision, which is unfortunate, but that seems like how it is likely to play out, right? So with that, I want to conclude this video. So again, this future is not set in stone. This future is not not something that cannot be changed at all. But the idea of this video is for you to provoke your thinking, that hopefully you take this seriously. At least I know, oh, this is just nonsense. It's very easy to dismiss it like that, right? None of this is going to happen. Oh no, don't worry, everything is going to be great. Doing that is very easy, but I have been my experience is, when I look and think about and say some things, I don't say it without analyzing or without understanding, going into the deep depths of the issue and analyzing and understanding the things from the root, right? Though to other people it will appear, when I tell them this is what is coming, it appears that, oh, this guy's gone mad, he doesn't know what he's talking about, this is all nonsense, he is not thought through, he does not understand. These are the reactions initially, but then as things I say start transpiring, I can give you examples. That's when they begin to realize, oh my gosh, what this guy said must make sense. I didn't think the right way, I was stupid, or I was misguided, I was led to believe the wrong things or make the wrong assumptions. So that is kind of what happens later. So this time around, at least, because this is going to be impacting the lives of billions of people on the planet, multiple hundreds of countries, right? It's the future of our kids and grandkids. So that I hope that all of you take this very seriously and start deeply introspecting, start deep thinking rather than partying, on a weekend for a few weekends. Instead, stay home or do something, go somewhere, go to a peaceful place and start thinking on these aspects and work now to change this likely future, right? So the future is in your hands. Basically, we can still avoid this if we make the right choices across the globe, not just in one country like United States, similarly in India, similarly across UK, everywhere, and try to avoid this type of a highly likely future that I see. So I hope that things will be better, and with that, talk to you next time. Until next time, have a great time. Bye now.